Are you looking for a block that's a star pattern that looks like it's on point? Stick around, I'll show you one. Hi, it's Roberta with Quilt Crafters Corner. Today's block is called Card Basket, and this block pattern comes from quilterscash.com, and it's free for you to print and use. So this block is a unique block because it has a star in it and it also looks like it's on point. So let's take a look at this block and I'll show you how to put it together. So here's the block here, and as you can see, it's got these lovely star points and it looks like it's on point, but yet it's not. Let me show you how to put this block together. So let's start with our middle block. And as you can see, this is 3 by 3, so we know these are 4.5-inch squares. So let's start with our center block. And our center block starts with a 4.5-inch square. I have 2.5-inch squares that are going to cover the points, the corners. So I have chosen this kind of teal greenish batik, and I'm going to place those on my points, and I'm going to draw my line. Okay, I've drawn my lines. Now what I'll do is I will take this to the sewing machine and I'm going to sew just this side of the line, just a thread or two off that line, so that when I fold over my material, it's going to be even. So let me go sew that and I'll show you. All right, I have my first 2 corners sewn on, and now what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove this excess. It just makes it easier to sew and put this block together when the extra fabric is removed. So now what I'll do is I will take this to the iron and I will press it to the outside. So in the meantime, I'm going to draw my lines on the back of these 2, and they are going to go on this point and that point. All right, let me go press this and then we'll place these 2 on. Okay, so now we will place this one here on this point, on this corner, and we'll place the other one on the other corner. So now I'm going to take this to the machine, and once again I'm going to sew on this side of the line and here. Okay, so I've sewn my 2 corners. Now I'm going to trim off the excess. And now I will take this to the iron and I will press these to the outside. First, I'm going to set my seam. Make sure that you set your seams. You want to just really heat this thread up so that you can kind of push it down into the fabric so you get a much nicer, crisper seam when you set your seams first and then you go to press your pieces over. So I will go set the seam and then I will press. Okay, so there's my center square. Now you want to make sure that these lie nice and flat, and I press it from both sides. I press it from the top and I press it to on the bottom to make sure that I get this to lie nice and flat. So there's my center block. So let's work on the half square triangles in the 4 corners. And what this is this is a 5 by 10 rectangle, and I have my 2 colors, good sides together. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to mark my center, top and bottom here. so that I know where these points are. Okay, there's my top, there's my bottom. Now on the bottom, I'm going to go out to the outside corners, here and here. Okay, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this to my machine and I'm going to start in this corner and I'm going to sew down a scant 1/4 inch off of this line to this point. I'm going to pivot or lift my pressure foot and leave my needle down because I'm going to be off the fabric, and I'm going to turn my fabric and sew up this way, and when I get here I'm going to turn the fabric and I'm going to sew down this way, turn the fabric and sew back up this way. And these are all a scant 1/4 inch off these lines. Okay, so there it is. It's sewn. I've sewn a scant 1/4 inch off of it on each side. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut this apart. So I'm going to start with the center first, and I'm just going to cut right along my center line. So now I have 2. And then just cut these 2 apart. There's 1. And there's 2. So now what I will do is I will take this and set my seam, and then I will press these open to the darker fabric. Okay, so here are my half square triangles. Now the next thing I need to do is I need to trim these up. And I need to make sure that they're square to this center seam. And I like to do that because then I get better 1/4 inch seam allowances here for when these blocks are attached together, and I don't lose my points. So remember I said this was a 3 by 3, so these are 4.5 inch squares. So I want to square this up to 4.5 inches. And there's my first one. Okay, so I have my 4 corners done. Now I need to do my points coming off of my center. And this is done with a 5 1/4 inch square and 2 5 1/4 inch of the contrasting fabric. So I need to cut this in half. Okay, so there are my 2 5 1/4 squares. And now what I need to do is I need to cut them in half once this way, and then cut them in half again this way. And what I like to do is I like to put my 45-degree angle on the outside here of my triangle, and it gives me a nice line to follow. It keeps my rotary cutter from going, and I know I've got equal amounts because it's on the 45 degree of the angle. So now I have these sections of and now I need to cut my alternate square, my alternate contrasting color, the same way. So I cut it in half on the diagonal, and then once again place my 45 degree angle on the outside of this. And now I have my 4 triangles. Here, 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 and here. Okay, so now we need to start putting these together. But first I need to take and I need to finish the accent off of my center square. And that's done. These are 3-inch squares that I will be cutting in half. I have 8 of these. Now, in order to put this particular square together, I kept these in pairs for a reason, because now I need to sew down this side of the triangle so that it can open like that. So I will take these all to my machine. Like I said, they're still in pairs. And I will sew those together. Okay, so I have my half square triangles sewn together. And as you can see, I've already pressed them, and I made sure that I pressed them really good so that they lay flat. Because now what I need to do is I need to add a background color to this. And the other thing I like to do is I like to cut off this little tab or dog ear or whatever you want to call it, just so that I know it's not going to get in the way of my 1/4-inch seam. It's not going to, distort anything. I just like to get those off of there. It just makes for a nicer seam when I go to sew this together. So I will go through and I'll just trim off those little dog ears and just get them out of the way. Okay, those are all cut off. So now I have my background fabric on top of my center contrasting fabric. Now, in order for these to work or come out correctly, make sure that you sew them correctly, because I want this to come out like that and this to be here, and it could be here. It really doesn't matter. We just need to make sure that we sew these together correctly. Okay, I have these all ready to sew. I'll take them to my machine and I will sew a scant 1/4 inch on this side. Okay, so here are my 4 parts of the triangle. So the next one we need to do is we need to do this one, this part here, and this needs to go here, and there like that. So what I need to do is I need to flip this over onto this one and then sew on that line. So let me show you that again. I have this one here and I have that one there, and I will sew Okay, I'm going to take this to the machine and I'm going to sew a scant 1/4 inch on that side. Okay, so here's my other half now. And now I just need to place these together and make sure that your seams nest in the center, and then you're just going to sew a scant 1/4 inch along this side. Okay, I will take these 4 to my machine and sew my scant 1/4 inch. Okay, I have sewn all of my triangles together. Now the first one I sewed in this direction, and I should have flipped it over because I have this extra seam here on this one. So sew it from the side so you can see this seam down here so that everything meets nicely in the center. It's an important part of the pattern. So just pay attention to which way you sew these together. So I sewed the last 3 flipped over from this point so that I know my point from this line, from this seam here, is in the center. So now I'm going to take these to the iron and I'm going to press them really good because you can see right here in the center there's lots of fabric there. So just open those seams up a little bit and you can spin the seams, and then that way you will not have a lot of bulk fabric in the middle. So just kind of twist those seams and pop the first couple. This seam line here is going to stop it. So don't worry that it's going to ruin the seam. It's not. You're just going to open that up so that you can spin these seams. You've got one going one way and one going the other. And here's the last one. So just kind of spin those seams so that you can get a nice flat center on your square. Okay, so here are my squares, and now what I want to do is I want to square these up. I want to make sure that they're 4.5 inches so that everything fits nicely together in my block. I take my 45-degree angle line and I place it on that seam line, and I make sure and just trim. Okay, and there's my first one. So let me trim up another. And what this does is by trimming, you're getting rid of all of the dog ears and all these little points here that are going to get caught in your seam. And you really want to trim those off just so that there's not any extra bulk in your seam. Now this is a little difficult to do because there's so much fabric in the middle, and that's another reason why I like to spin the seams, to reduce as much bulk in that center as possible. Okay, and there's my last square. Now we just need to sew our rows together. So I start here and I start flipping my my blocks over. And now I'll take this to the machine and sew a scant 1/4 inch on this side. Okay, so there's my first all sewn on. So now I will take and I will sew my last block for the row on. And when I sew the middle one, I usually sew it from this side so that I can see where these two seams meet, and I can just sew right above it so don't lose my points. All right, I'll take those to the machine and sew them. Okay, so here are my 3 rows. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to attach them here. And what I have done is I have pressed my seams one way on one row and another on the other row. That way I know I can get a nice nested seam there, and everything's going to match. The other thing I want to do is I want to sew from this side so that I can make sure I don't lose my points. Okay, so now I'm going to flip over my top row and take that to the machine and sew it on. And there are my 2 blocks. This block is called Card Basket, and as you can see, it has a very unique, interesting pattern. If you liked this video, please like and subscribe to my YouTube channel. If you'd like to join a group of like-minded quilters, come join Quilters Swarm. It's a private Facebook group. Just answer the questions and you can get right in. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.